Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the VFX Nomads podcast. We're joined again with the core team, and what are we going to talk about this month, guys?
Well, you mentioned that you were recorded another tutorial, right? Is it on refractions? Did you say?
Yes, yeah. I just pretty much last night powered through and got done with this new material AOV tutorial about refractions and reflections, and it's very hard to separate those two out because they're very similar. And as a result, I talk about like the problems with them, why they end up in the same pass, and then solutions for that problem. And you sort of have to keep it all together as one big part. So at the current moment, it's like an hour and 50 minutes, but I'm trying to edit it down. But part of it is a live session recording with Julius, a lighter from Trickster. So part of it's kind of like its own screen sharing thing. So it's just super hard to figure out if you should separate the topic into smaller chunks or just keep it all together into like a bigger video so that people can find the whole topic at once.
I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? And I still think having it all together. So it's like, right, this is everything you need on this area is the way to go. Otherwise, if it's too split out, I mean, again, this is where our styles differ, I guess, in terms of teaching, but I think it's super beneficial to be like, right, I just need to know everything possible on refraction to reflection. It's
it's definitely...
How long does it take you, by the way, to plan that thing? Because it's an hour, but you've probably done a ton of research beforehand, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's taken like a few months. And there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and there's a lot of like these solutions that you're sort of discovering along the way. I guess you think you did something good, and then you go to record it, and then you're like, actually, I could explain that better, or I need another example to emphasize this point that I'm trying to make. And then one thing kind of leads to another, and you think of another solution that you're gonna have to show. And in this case, it's really hard because you first need to know the problem, right? So you need to explain the problem, then you go into a little bit of like the science behind it of what it's trying to mimic, and then like what is the problem for compositors, and then how do you try to fix that? And I also had to go into like how a lighter would try to fix that, because a lot of it has to do with like you can't do much as a compositor. You need to talk to the lighters, and so I'm trying to also with Julius, explain the solutions from the lighting side, which is not my, it's not my zone. So that's why Julius came in and helped me with that. So that's like
I thought a lighter would fix it by just telling the comp to hack it in comp. just daily it and then just walk slowly backwards from your computer.
Yeah. Well, I was joking with Julius that a lot of lighters might be mad at us after this video because it turns out there is a solution for some of this stuff that they were trying to hide behind, perhaps.
I had no idea his name was pronounced Julius. Everybody at ILM called him Julius.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this because I asked him, how to pronounce his surname, just because I was trying to get it super correct, and he was like, yeah, people at ILM or something called me Julius Isle, and it's Julius Eel. So yeah,
he hasn't talked to G since.
He never corrected me, man. I don't think I ever said his last name.
I don't think he cares that much, honestly. But it's just different pronunciations of the letters. But
that's pretty awesome, though, man.
What made you target reflections and refractions as your current tutorial?
Well, I had to make my way through material AOVs, right? And I talked about diffuse and specular and emission, which are the main ones, right? But then there's always like the redheaded stepchild, which is refractions and transmission, right? And it's something I was purposely not talking about because, well, first of all, if you don't even have anything that's made of glass in your scene, it just turns out black. So like, how can I explain something that's not there? So you need to specifically make examples for that. And it's just so difficult to talk about that because it is the result of the other three, right? So you need to talk about the other three first. And also the fact that you're kind of stuck. There's not, once you get the whole beauty rendered into the refraction pass, and that's what you get. There's not much you can do as a compositor.
Yeah, that's true. Because if you change if you change the diffuse and spec, your reflection doesn't update. So now it's all broken and wrong. And,
right. Adrian rendered me a good test. I reached out to him and he rendered me basically a glass jar full of balloons, and the balloons have like speck. That was also reflected in a mirror.
Nice.
So like it was the ultimate example of like, hey, you're totally screwed.
Pushing the ray tracers to the max.
And the mirror had a glass on top, like normal mirror, so it was going through the transmission, not the reflection. So.
Yeah, we had to fix it. So it some of it showed up in the specular, and some of it showed up in the transmission. But
Nice.
It's just it's an interesting subject, and honestly, probably the reason it took me so long is because I didn't know that much about it, and I had to figure it out also how to think about it and get familiar with it, and then find the solutions. I suppose so.
We actually funny you brought that up because we had this issue on the Last Airbender on a few shots because one of the sequences I was leading was. When actually I don't know if I can talk about the sequence, but basically there was lots of reflections in water, and we were finding that we were having to push the like snow color quite a lot, and obviously the reflections in the water weren't updating. And the VFX supervisor's came from a CG background, a lighter, who's one of the owners of the company called Nicholas Jacobson. And he was spotting it instantly. It was so good. He was like looking at the comments being like, these two don't line up. We need to like fix this. And I think in the end, actually, it was the lighters started looking into it. I think we nudged it in terms of the look depth for the material, if that makes sense. So like we kind of looked at the look of the ice or the snow in comp, and then we just brought that back into CG. But obviously it would have been nice to hack in comp, but that came up a lot and it was something we looked out for.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you definitely need to collaborate with a lighter on if you have a lot of refractions or transmission or whatever you want to call it, or if you're looking at a mirror. Like a perfect example is if you have a helmet and you have a visor and it's made of glass, and you're trying to either put a CG character like inside or trying to reflect the environment, because that image that you get, depending on how clear it is to see, you're either dealing with the refraction through the helmet or the reflection on top of the helmet, and in both cases you're totally screwed. So you really need help from the lighting department on that one.
Oh, that's super cool, man. Out of interest, do you already have like solutions at Trickster that you do to fix this? That is kind of what you're talking about, or is this more you two just like riffing on each other of how if you two were given a shot, how you two would solve it, if that makes sense? Right?
It's not a Trickster solution. It's a thing called light path expressions, which is a lighting solution. So in a nutshell, you basically rebuild the AOV that you need, and then you add some additional thing to it. So you have a lot of control. So you're basically making like custom AOVs that will actually refract the diffuse pass, for example. So there's ways to do it.
I wonder if like going forwards, if you used Unreal or something like this to generate those passes, you could technically, if it was reflecting a CG scene that was also in the Unreal, you could almost like pipe your diffuse changes into the Unreal whatever, so your reflections would actually update and stuff like this, right? Because you could nudge your 3D scene based on your changes you made in, I don't know, this starts getting a bit nuts and creating workflows.
It's really trippy.
Pipe it back.
It's really trippy to think about some of this stuff, especially in like real life. I know I had a phone call with Adrian this week, and I was like geeking out to him, and I'm just glad that he wasn't like, yeah, everybody knows this, you idiot. Like, so I was glad that I reached some topic that at least was kind of interesting to him.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, and I find it amazing how like even if you try to hyper focus on something, like I'm going to try to be the best compositor ever, like even the 100% perfect compositor, if that would exist. In order to achieve that, you would need to learn about every single topic in the universe. Because at some point you'll reach like the moment. In your case, it was like, okay, lighting, that's obvious, no? But you would need to reach like the moment that you need to learn about physics, water, light diffusion, and so if you focus and go down each rabbit hole, you'll have to learn every single thing in the universe, and that's like pretty fascinating, I think.
Oh my God. And then you become God, and you I know everything, and you have this like big life.
That's like yeah, if you do not like learning, do not do this, because you'll have to learn so many things.
Well, you can only learn one thing at a time, right? So as soon as you learn, about this subject, somebody else could be learning about a different subject, and you can never learn everything at once, or whatever you switch to, you'll get worse at the other subject. So
exactly, you forget bits. I mean, to be honest, you see in the VFX industry, right? This is why like Scanline are known for their water, Framestore are known for their like creature stuff. Like each company itself has like almost like a specialist that the clients will go to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super cool, man.
there's also a lot of this company has done that, so the insurance companies kind of prefer to go that direction. But
I have a lot of respect for like VFX soups because they need to know so much about the 3D pipeline. Like they need to know effects and animation and modeling and all this stuff, and it just makes me respect them a lot more just by diving into like a topic that I wasn't too sure about in this, like in the lighting side. That's just they need to know so much, and it shows
a lot of that journey for them starts after they become VFX soups as well.
Yeah,
like if they come from just a lighting background, then suddenly they're not suddenly, but they become a VFX supervisor. Then it becomes their job to learn more about photography and more about integration and this and that. Also, when you have a soup that comes from compositing, a lot of times they don't know about ray tracing and this and that. So as soon as they become that, in order to make their lives easier and for all the people around them to become easier, they have to start studying the refractions and all the things that you probably delved into in making this tutorial.
I mean, when a VFX soup that comes from comp, either you place that person in a 99% compositing project, or you place that person with a really strong CG soup, and then that's how you start that path, right? And the other way around.
You need support for sure when you first start out. You don't know.
I was wondering, like, if you're a VFX soup that's come from a comp background, do you push more stuff back to lighting because it's like, how much of a pain in the arse it is to fix it in comp? Or do you keep it in comp because that's the bit you understand, right? It's like, I don't know. G, you were comp soup, right? Or were you VFX soup at Meglis or comp soup?
There was 1.5 projects I did some VFX soup work on.
And did you find you would try and kind of like not hack stuff, but you know what I mean? Like do fixes in comp rather than pushing them back? Or how did you find like learning what you could push back onto the lighters and back into comp?
I think ideally it would be objectively analyzing what's the path of least resistance. I wouldn't say I ever inclined towards doing it in comp just because I came from a comp background. But it's in even like I think a more obvious example is in the beginning during the bidding phase, when you're trying to figure out if you should do things in 2D and 3D. The CG soups, and of course it's their job to do this, but they will often try to see with how much they can get away with pushing things into comp responsibilities and whatnot.
Is that because it's cheap, or because they're trying to like offload work? If that makes sense, is that because it's cheaper to fix in comp, or is it?
I think it's just such an easy thing to dismiss. Like, oh, you need this. Can we just have it done in comp? Yeah. Can we just fix it in post? And it becomes a tempting thing. It's not. I don't know if it's them trying to unload the work. It's just more.
An easier solution, I guess. It's like Occam's razor. Yeah. Like it's like the simplest way.
Occam's razor is a great way to put it.
Okay,
that's a really good point. What I've seen, I think, is VFX soups that come from comp, but that have been comp supervisor for a long time in a studio that kind of pushes towards CG solving things properly before they move into comp. That person then arrives to VFX supervision with a concept of, okay, this can be done in that way. Like I've seen that a lot. Like VFX soups that come from comp, from a background where they always did everything in comp, then they will strongly push towards fixing stuff in comp, and it's like, are you sure this should not be tackled properly right now? And
I'd say the best companies in the world, like I'd say the companies that are kicking out the best stuff over and over again, which is probably Weta and ILM, they rely the most heavily on their CG team compared to all the other companies. In my experience anyway, like I remember being at ILM, there's notes being like, I could fix this if you want. And they're like, no, we'll do it in. And the reason why they do that, to be honest with you, to a certain extent, it makes sense, is because you could make that change in that in CG, and now if you've got 20 shots, you can just kick off all those 20 shots, and now that change is happening once. Whereas if you have to brief 20 compers, they might all do their own different take on that note, and now it's like a pain in the arse, and it's causes more work sometimes.
I think it's a collaboration. I don't think it's ever as simple as one and the other. I mean, a good example, and I'm not gonna name what project it was or anything, but there was like a time constraint, and we had a project. I guess it was in a very big dark room, and there was just too much noise. There was like you could not render like the CG in time with the proper setting. It was just a nightmare. Whatever, the asset was too big. There's too many fine details. And then a comper was just like, let's just render a single frame really high res and project it. And like you need like these you need these two minds of like some person's really good at thinking in one way, another person's really good at thinking another way, and you really need to communicate and collaborate with that to find the best solution.
That triangle, like quality, time, budget, depends what you're waiting more. Like if it's like 90% to quality, then you will probably go the...
Yeah, I couldn't imagine a CG soup just being like, oh, let's just project a frame. But a comper would think that like kind of immediately like, we don't need all this. The camera move's not that big a deal.
Or you can use the same background. Like on the Last Airbender, there was a load of like super close shots of people. And it was like, dude, we can just use exactly the same render. And now we haven't got to regrade it. We haven't got to wait. Now there's no issues in terms of like lights have changed. Let's just, I mean, to be honest with you, I think my default is always hacking and comp because I started at NPC. And when I was there, they relied very heavily on their comp team. I don't know if that's always the case. Like Jungle Book, it wasn't the case in like certain shows. But my solution is always hacking and comp.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's...
When I was at DNEG, they did a lot of comp work. I remember their comp team was very, very strong in some of the render. Like you would expect for such a big company. Maybe it's changed. Maybe it was just a project. But like I know for a fact at Weta, some of the renders are looking pretty good because I've seen some of the renders that they kick out at render from Weta. But yeah, at DNEG, I remember heavy templates, heavy comps, like a lot, which made me really respect the comp department. So there's a balance for sure. Like companies either lean a little bit more towards CG or a little bit more towards comp, I feel like.
But the thing is like, so my experience, G's maybe is the same. Like at Weta and again, I can only speak for RLM. It was, the CG looked quite good, but every now and then there'd be something break and you'd have to fix it. Like you still had to be able to like hack the shit out of this thing if you needed, but yes, they're not like relying on you doing that to make every shot look good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's always a nice feeling though when you do kind of become the savior that fixes it, because everybody's like in awe of the fact that this comper just pulled this out of their butt.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I think every single comper should be technical to some point. So there's no way around being technical. Even if you're the more creative person and everything, like you need to be technical for those cases where you have to solve something.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes your communication with the CG department too. If they know that you're a strong comper doing everything that you can, and then you're like, hey, I really need this thing. They know it's not because you're like, oh, why can't he just, fake this thing? It's because you're actually needing something, and it's helping.
I just prepared this topic for 1 month and had a 2-hour conversation with Julius, and I really think I need this right now. Okay, Tony, I'll do it.
Wait, what was the thing you mentioned, Tony? What is it called?
The light path expressions.
Right, so that's what we got to do. If you've got any issues in your lighting, any compas out there, just put light path expressions ? To your lighter.
Can't you use light path expressions?
Exactly, and then just leave it at that. Just leave it open. Light path expressions will fix all lighting.
I hope. Please don't do that, guys. Please.
Tony Lyon said, light path expressions will fix this. That's what we got to say in dailies, and it's fine. Send them Tony's
that'd be like that'd be like a lighter saying, "Can't you use smart vectors for that?" I heard there was a copycat. Can't you just copy?
Exactly.
Josh, you mentioned that you were leading on Avatar. How was that experience overall?
Yeah, it was great, man. It's
Avatar: The Last Airbender, to be specific.
Yes, yeah. It's not some sort of like knockoff Blue Smurfs in space version or anything like that.
They're green.
Yeah, exactly. Just you correct Avatar 2 and then it's... So, I was leading... There were 5 comp leads. It was a really big show. One of the biggest shows we had at ILP, which is very interesting seeing like the culture clash almost of like small company mentality versus like massive show and like running dailies when you got a big show and they have to be a bit more structured but these casual. So it was super cool seeing that. And then I was one of 5 leads, had like 4 or 5 sequences to look after, which was great.
And
like
how many
90 on the whole show, there's probably 50 compas. Wow. I think so. I might be over exaggerating. Maybe like 30. It was definitely, I'd say around 30 plus.
And your team was like 5, 10, 15?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, around that. Probably closer to 10, I would say, between all the sequences together, which was super fun. Like it was really, really great. And So yeah, and I'd known that I'm friends with the comp soup, so it made it really easy and stuff. And 95% of the company, I think, was on this show all at one time because it happened just as the strikes happened. And luckily, this is the show that came in basically, and we had all these shots, and yeah, we just kept getting shots. So most of the company was on this thing. But yeah, I loved it, man. It was a really, really fun show, very fun, and it was the client was just super appreciative as well because we were kind of helping him out a fair bit with look deving stuff and things. So yeah, it was good. It was a good show.
So it was something that you picked up later as it was already in the VFX stage?
No. So we were already supposed to work on it, but we kept picking up more shots as like other companies maybe couldn't deliver theirs. I mean, something that's cool is so the owner of the company, who was also one of the owners, who's also the VFX suit, he went to Svalbard on like this massive boat and took like reference photos and videos and drone footage. And it was super cool. It made a massive difference because we had Google Maps and literally he'd worked out where these shots were in the real world. And then we had an IBL ball for that place, which just made it amazingly useful for all this stuff.
Svalbard is the island north of Norway, right? But it's still part of
so. Yeah.
And that was referenced for like the Northern Water Tribe stuff?
Exactly. So we did a lot of the first episode stuff with the Northern Water Tribe. And then also like the Katara waterbending stuff. And then some other kind of like one-off shots, which is pretty good. And I had like one nice shot that I could keep jumping into, and then it was a lot of like fixing and helping where I could. So that was good. I think we've mentioned this multiple times, like I'm quite enjoying this life of jumping between these two positions, right? Because as you said, G, earlier, it's like you start getting like PTSD and being like, right, is someone messaging me on Slack and I need to help with something? But do you know what I mean? It's like, it's nice to put headphones on and just be like, right, I'm just going to work on my shot for the day and it's good. So it's nice to jump between those, but it was super fun. It was super fun.
Nice. And I'm sure that was a dream project. I mean, if that was me, I would definitely be beaming because the cartoon is something that I absolutely like adored.
There was a lot of pressure though, because the One Piece thing was really good, right? Like the One Piece live action was really fucking cool. So there was a lot of pressure on like, wow, like I hope they do this justice based on that. I mean, have you seen the live action? Because I like, does it do the of Last Airbender?
Oh yeah.
What do you think? Like, does it do that? Because I hadn't watched the anime before. Does it do it justice?
I think
it did. It was epic.
Nice. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. I really was geeking out about it, and it brought me a lot of joy. It made me feel like a kid again when I was watching the Airbender series. And I'm happy that you got to work on it because that would have been a dream come true for me, I think.
And they got season
happy
2
one
and 3.
of us got to talk.
There's season 2 and 3 as well, so I think it's going to be quite a nice one for the company, just to like recurring project now, which is pretty good. So
yeah, the M. Night Shyamalan movie was such a letdown that there was a lot of pressure on this show to do well. And, I came in with a healthy dose of skepticism about how good it was going to be. And just even after watching the first episode, I was like, oh yeah, they nailed it. Like they nailed the characters, the casting, the effects, like the choreography, and it was just so much fun to watch, honestly.
They did the cut. I mean, my girlfriend watched the anime before and the Katara one as well, like the spin-off. She was saying the casting is like fucking on point. The whole thing, like, ang. Oh, gee, God, gee. Who needs to
it's 95%
replacements?
It's 95%.
yeah. But the main cast is great, I think.
So, Gio, who's the worst and the best for you?
You trying to get me canceled, Adrian?
No, I mean,
for me. The best for me for sure was Sokka.
I agree with that completely. He's a hard one to get.
He looks like him, and he has his mannerisms. He's got the voice, and he's got the humor all down.
Aang too. I thought the whoever the main actor there is just super good.
But how are they going to do it? Because by the time season 3 gets shot, right, he's going to be like in his 20. I don't know his age, but he's going to be like 20 something. So I don't know what they're going to.
I was wondering if they were going to shoot them because they both got greenlit at the same time, right?
Yeah, they've announced season 2 and 3, I think, already.
Maybe they would just shoot them back to back.
Yeah,
with like 1 week of vacation.
I think in the timeline of the show, it takes place over the course of like a year. But obviously, you can't do that with actors that are aging. So they're just gonna, I think, prolong the timeline to like 2 or 3 years or something.
It's going to have to hobbit him. He's going to be like miles away from the other people, so he looks tiny on the screen. It's the only way to do it.
Well, isn't that what happened? Isn't that what happens with the
Like the direwolves in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like on Hobbit, where they just made all the scenery bigger to make them look smaller.
Isn't Stranger Things like supposed to happen every year? But it's every year is like 3 years, and they're getting like into their late 20s.
And also, it's supposed to be a
so
Halloween
old now.
thing, right? And then it comes out at Christmas, so it's like I don't know what this show is anymore. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one as well.
So just now that we're still on the avatar, just quick question, just in case. Is there any piece of learning that you think you had from this experience in this project, or some area that you became the strongest that you found like, okay, I've really trained this part that, more than previous projects or something?
So I think where I was most useful is I'd worked at bigger companies, if that makes sense. Whereas a lot of people at ILP have, because they kind of mostly started out in the Swedish, and again, the VFX group was at DNEG and used to work in London and stuff, but it'd been a while. So I think where I was most useful is like, right, here's how they would structure this thing at a big company, right? And things like this. So it was more of that kind of like, okay, let's do sequence dailies and this kind of thing rather than just kind of free flowing for a playlist or, and neutral grades, like, okay, how can we make neutral grades easier? And there's a bit of discussion about that and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, for me, it was just so interesting seeing these two cultures clash basically. But that's where I felt like I was most useful. I'd worked at big companies and I knew, right, okay, I can offer some input in this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Makes sense.
Like I've seen it, for example, in Orca, when I was supervising the Knights of the Zodiac. So it was like a big project and we were a small company and really young company. And it's like this thing, like, okay, I remember working like this and like that, but I was an artist. I did not implement any of that. So now like trying to reverse engineer how that worked so that I can now implement it in the company that I'm working in. And that's pretty interesting.
I mean, this goes actually, so a really good bit of advice I had from a VFX group at NPC a long time ago. And he'd done this throughout his career, and I think it's a really good thing to do, is he actually like would write down all the best things that all his favorite VFX groups or leads would do. And then when you end up in one of these positions, you've got like a fucking playlist of exactly what would work. And this again is the advantage of working at a few companies, because if you've only ever worked at one company, how do you know what you're doing is the best way? It might just be because it's the status quo and everyone's always done it this way, right? And you can't actually like have anything to compare it to. Whereas if you've worked at a few companies, you can kind of see the strengths and the weaknesses of all of them. And then you can pick the best one that's kind of for the job. So yeah, that's probably where I was most useful in that respect. And then the other thing I was finding as well.
Beneficial.
Sorry.
That's why it is beneficial to see how multiple companies do things.
Did you have that at Megalith then, G? Did you have the same at Megalith? Like, was there some input and things that you took from other companies? Because I think the owners of there have come from ILM, right, which is a big company, so they probably had an idea of how to structure these things. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, not speaking of me, but the pipeline itself is kind of inspired by how ILM does things. For me, I feel I live by the principle: absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is your own. Bruce Lee. So every good soup I've had, I just kind of internalized the way they did things. One of my favorite VFX soup was a guy named Grady Kofer from ILM.
Grady, man! Oh, Ready Player One.
Ready Player One.
Oh,
he did this thing that it was the simplest thing. But whenever he would give feedback, he would use sound effects with his mouth. So he'd be like, can we just have an explosion here? But a secondary explosion? And then over here, it's whoosh. Especially going into a place where like English isn't the first language. It's such a useful tool. Anytime I give feedback to give sound effects.
That's a cool idea, actually.
I like that.
I like that as well. I think, and also the thing with Grady is he had no fucking ego. He was like the nicest guy. Like you'd walk into dailies and it'd feel like he's fresh and it's his first shot he's reviewing, no matter what time of day. He he was great. He's really good.
I mean, no ego is a very critical aspect and skill in working in a team.
It's the common theme, I think. Ernest, Giacomo, Grady, like all the best of like no ego. They realize they've got a fuck ton of stuff to learn. And it's a collaboration to try and make something cool, basically, not like a dictatorship.
Yeah,
Dominic. I love Dominic as well.
Dominic as well.
Yes,
he hasn't been on yet, but maybe he'll come on at some point. But one of the great things about Dominic's and Ernest's sessions, it's the same with like the sound effects kind of idea, is they would always like draw on the frame. Like they would like do doodles. So while somebody was talking about scheduling, they'd like, draw on the face of the character or something, or draw like a donkey in the background or whatever. And I always thought that was funny, and it's like really entertaining to do. So.
Well, and also it was always a collaboration with those two. Like you were in dailies, and it was you figuring out how to make this thing look cooler. It wasn't like this out.
It's very like
until production speaks up and goes, "We have 5 shots and 10 minutes left. Please hurry it up."
That always happens, but it's always like it's nice. They're trying to keep the fun, right? So, production is trying to move things along, but they understand as well that the fun is part of the, like, keeping everybody sane, because you can't just do that for 12 hours a day and like for months,
sure.
Yeah.
You'll go crazy and your team will go crazy.
You have to look forward to the daily sessions, basically. And they're in dailies all day. So basically they're just trying to make their day a little bit brighter, I think.
Also, speaking about kind of like maybe the soups who I think I've taken negative stuff from are the ones who you never feel like you're progressing on a shot. And no matter what you daily, you feel like they'll always give you notes. And I've seen that on a show a long time ago. And it was like the morale on that show was super low, because basically whatever you were daily, you just feel like they're going to give me notes no matter what, up until the fun. Like you just felt like there was no end point that they had in mind, if that makes sense. And so that's a negative thing that I've got on my list of like, okay, I need to make sure that doesn't happen.
I was on a show at a company one time where the comp version was 96. Mm-hmm. And just randomly, another soup pulled up a version like 55, and they compared them back and forth. And the VFX soup goes, 55 actually looks better than 96. What have we been doing this whole time?
Yeah.
And that's why Godzilla -1 was quite cheaper than usual movies. But I don't want to go to that topic yet. I want to stick with the supervisors for a second. So just quickly going back to Josh's point. So I think a really big thing of VFX soups, comp soups, leads, and everyone in a leadership position is that, number one, making it be fun. That's a really big part of it. But number two, making the artist feel that they're in the same team as you. And I think like whenever a VFX soup starts by asking the questions like, what do you feel? What have you done? Why are you doing this? And then it's the artist like we are trying to figure this out together. It's not a one-directional thing. Then the artist usually feels empowered to make proposals, and actually I think productivity goes up a lot. The result of the shots improves a lot, and actually if you do not feel that disconnection, then you will not feel that they will just give you random notes forever. It's like we're going in a single direction.
Yeah,
it does become an art form doing that within in an efficient manner within the compressed time you have, because those discussions can and often do go on for, a bit. They spill over a little bit. And if you're the time slot for like comp dailies or effects dailies, if you spill over, it kind of bites you in the butt later, because you can't keep pushing the same shots. And then people have like been waiting for their shots to reviewed. And then maybe only like the first 60% of the shots actually got looked at. So I found that like the more I soup, I guess the better I got it. Giving direct feedback, but also not keeping such a serious, like number-driven tone.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's a sweet spot. You kind of, as a VFX, you have to like manage dailies, if that makes sense. Like, this endpoint's coming up, so you're like trying to like manage the time of the whole thing while giving notes. But yeah,
it's hard to do. Experience. Must be hard to do to keep that rhythm, keep it, an eye on the clock with all the shots that you have. And I think it's one of those things that it's almost like never ending. This is something I learned many, many years ago, but it's like, it doesn't matter how good you are at your shots and how fast you get them done. There's always more shots to do. It's like, you can try to like speed through stuff, but the list is ever growing, right? So it's like, you just have to keep a pace that you can live with, I think.
Yeah. But I do think in dailies, though, it's the lead's job to kind of like, hey, look, I know we're short on time. We don't need to look at this. Here's my point. Okay, it's up to the leads as well to kind of like take responsibility for making sure that you don't go over days and stuff. Which again just comes with experience, right? Like there's these weird soft skills that are hard to kind of like teach, but you just kind of get a vibe for as you've been in the industry longer, and you can kind of read the room a little better. So
yeah. Speaking of soft skills, I was gonna ask, like, what are some key soft skills that you think are crucial for the job? Like, that's something that gets thrown around a lot, like that term soft skills. But like, I mean, everybody says communication. I feel like that's a catch-all term, you know? I feel like that needs to be defined a little bit better. But yeah, what are some things?
I think a great quote is, people will always remember how you made them feel, regardless of, you know, how talented you are, how skilled you are, how technical you are, how creative you are. If you are unable to be taught and unable to be, I guess, looked in the eye and just talked to on an equal level, then people generally not want to work with you if you can't do that.
Yeah.
So a soft skill, the one I'd recommend, like you said, communication is just, it's a very broad term, but just making people feel like you're on the same level and that you're building a connection with them.
So another thing I find that artists don't appreciate, or an easy way to get ahead, is empathizing with production and coordinators, because most artists, well, not most, but a lot of artists see that production is like, it's like us versus them, and like they're the ones telling our shots are due, and then we want, but if you just say, if you give them a heads up on what's due, like, so they haven't got to reach out to you, it's something that I found like they really, really appreciate. If you can just be like, hey, look, this might need to push because I'm not getting the lighting until this date. And if you feel like, if they feel like you're responsible for your shots and you're taking ownership, you end up getting better shots that way, because they know that, hey, look, if this thing isn't going to get delivered, then someone they'll flag it and you're just going to sit on it. And again, it's one of those things that rather than this like fight, and also as you move up in the industry, you're going to have to work with them more. So it's a skill that you may as well learn as early on as possible. So if you're a junior and you can start flagging this stuff and talking with production about what you're going to get delivered, or maybe you go, oh, look, you know what? It might be worth us waiting on this one because this shot's going to be sent that is very similar. So we could wait what they say. So it's like, if you're thinking a bit bigger than just yourself and a team player, I think it's a way you can get ahead very easily.
Yeah. When I've learned to appreciate a lot is the managing the egos in general. Just thinking about people have egos, and you have to acknowledge that. And if they have egos, then it may be worth doing kung fu, thinking what you can say so that they will react in the way that you expect without hurting their feelings, and with them feeling good about doing what you initially intended for them to do. In other words, like, you can make the same effect in two different ways, and one is really making them feel bad and one makes them feel good. But there's like that way of getting the message across without hurting their feelings and letting them know that, like, you're saying it from a position of both respect and collaboration and all of that. So that it's like, okay, here's what we can do, and just really thinking about all of those ways to say things so that egos will not be hurt. I think it's way more productive than trying to impose any messages or anything. So I think that's one huge topic in itself.
Actually, a good example, I don't know, maybe this is just me tooting my own horn, but a good example of that was on The Last Airbender. There was a little small note that needed to be done to a shot, and the artist was slammed in my team, and I knew it was slammed, so I just went in and quickly nudged it quickly. And I didn't want to make it feel like, hey, look, it's me taking control. I'm being like, yeah, look, I'm the savior. So I sent him a message on Slack, be like, this is what I've done. I've addressed this note. It's your shot. You've done all the hard work. You daily it. It's not, because the amount of times I've seen leads, but like, it's like, again, it's like, no, I'm going to save the day, and they want to kind of like be like pally with the comp soup and VFX soup. It's just horrible, and it just ruins. So again, it's like those small things of like, hey, look, it's your shot. It's just me trying to help out you, but you need to take all the credit for this.
Yeah. You have to take yourself out of the equation. You just be Gandalf in it.
I mean, this is something I learned from Pietro Ponti, who's a VFX soup, who's at ILP on Lovecraft. Now he's at RLM. He just did the Marvels. It was like, your life should not get harder if I'm your supervisor, right? Like, your job is not to make it, like, you should be making all your artists' lives easier. They shouldn't have been like, man, this would have been a lot easier if Josh wasn't fucking in the way being my lead. It should be the opposite. I should have made their life easier. It should be easier to make cool looking shots with me involved. Otherwise, you're not doing a good job. Otherwise, you're just making yourself, you're basically just creating work for yourself so that your position's justified, which I see a lot of leads do, which is, by the way, which is why a lot of VFX companies don't make much money, because there's a lot of VFX soups and comp leads and comp soups and CG soups who think their job is to justify why they're there and have an opinion on stuff just for the sake of it. And that's a great way to lose a ton of profit for no reason. As G said, version 55 looks better. What the fuck have we been doing? It's like, there you go.
I think that goes way beyond VFX to all the branches of the film. Probably everybody needs to add their little sprinkle of
Of the film, I would say of humanity.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Adrian, what was the film you had mentioned earlier? Why it won?
The one with
I think it's because it's like the pipeline and workflow wasn't bullshit, right? Like it was like super efficient from Godzilla -1. Like the process was really efficient, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's what I meant. That. Yeah, if you do a film with such a tight budget, you are not doing 96 versions and then going to 5. That's for sure.
Hopefully.
By the way, if the director was sitting next to the artists, maybe they approved all shots on version 1. Maybe that's the first version that they were rendered.
True. He didn't let them render until it was perfect.
One other topic, by the way, sorry. Transparency. I just wrote that down. So I think transparency with the team is a huge one because it's, again, a yin and yang kind of thing. Because you have to be really transparent if you want the team to respect and really feel on board with your plans. But at the same time, there's critical things or things that you have to be really careful about how and when you say them. So it's like that balance. I think it's also a really soft skill that everyone needs to learn at some point.
That's a good one. Like being honest but not alarming, I guess is And
also sometimes it's cool to like invite artists to meetings that maybe they wouldn't have get invited to at other companies, so they understand why these decisions are being made. That's something I would do. I'd be like, hey, look, this is your shot. You be in this bit. It doesn't make sense for me and the lighting lead to talk about your shot. You be in there, and now you know the decision making, and you can offer input. So now it's like, okay, now you've got an idea.
It also makes them feel like special and important, and kind of gives them a role that they want to, so that they can meet the expectation in front of them.
Yeah.
I've always appreciated when people have been really honest about the situation. Like, hey, we thought this was going to take a few weeks, but it took longer, and now we're strapped for time, and we need this amount of like push to get this through. Like, if they try to like lie to you and say no, everything's fine, and then but now we need to stay later, you kind of feel like, oh, why wasn't I told about this earlier? Like, why wasn't I warned? So I always appreciate when people are very honest about what the current situation is.
Yeah, my rule of thumb there is any information that you do not need to hide from people, better give it to them, even if it's not useful. It's like they will feel that they are not being hidden from anything. And I think that
Coming back actually just quickly to what Adrian's saying about like different motivations for different artists, it's exactly the same I found with teaching. Like, because you need to motivate them people in different ways. Like some people I teach, they want to learn shit because maybe there was some supervisor at a company who was a bit of a dick to them, or some artist that was a dick to them, and they want to go back to that company and like show all this cool stuff they can do and like be like, fuck you, like I'm really good now. So that's one type of people. Another type of people just want to make super cool shots, so they're less technical, and you have to try and like wow them with some like cool shit that they can do, and then they'll learn the technical. And then the other people are the ones where you show them something and they want to know how you did it, like showing someone a magic trick, and then they're like, wow, how did you do that magic trick? And so I found those are like the three archetypes of people that you teach. And if you know them, then you know how to push the buttons, because you're like, hey, look, when you go back to that studio and you do this little trick, they're going to be fucking wowed, because now you can do like mid-level shots as a junior. And like, it's exactly as Adrian said, like you got to know what's going to push these people on and stuff. It's
that's great. That's a great advice. Like catering your communication to the specific person and making sure that they're hearing what you need to tell them.
There's a big part of empathy there. Like knowing how the other person will feel about stuff you will say to them, and that really gives you a lot of power.
There's a good book on this. It has the most gimmicky clickbait.
I know the one you're going to talk about, I think.
Name. It's called How to Win Friends and Make People Like You.
Oh, yeah, I've read that.
Oh, yeah, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Or something like that.
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah. But it's, clickbaity title aside, it's such a good exploration into how to motivate people and just leave a lasting impression, while also, like I said in that quote, people always remember how you made them feel, and you want them to come out of a project or out of a company, if they're a freelancer, with good feelings towards you as their soup or just a comper that's sat next to them.
One useful thing from that is if you fuck up, like apologize immediately, because then people are, oh no, it's okay, like we'll try and fix it. Whereas if you've been hiding it for that was like a big thing there. You should apologize like immediately if you mess up, basically. And it's very hard for someone to be annoyed at you because you haven't done anything. Like you've just messed up. It's okay.
I don't know if this is from the book, but one thing that I take with me is that people want to help. Like people really, really want to help. So if you can offer somebody a chance to help, if you say, man, I really need some help with this thing, people will naturally want to jump on that and be like, oh, okay, I can. Like everybody wants to be the savior of their own story, right? So if you offer them a chance to help you out and do you a favor, you know, if you really need one, and you communicate that, people will jump at that chance to like, you know, do you a solid.
That's a good one. Just while we're on this, another one that I found useful is like go first, which is kind of like don't wait for like the other people. Like let's say you're a lead, don't wait for your compass to do something nice to you first. Like do something nice for them, and then they'll reciprocate it. Or don't wait for a company to reach out to you. Reach out to them. Like go first in all this stuff, and it's a lot. Like, and that's
like
the same
dating.
training as well. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of similarities, I guess.
It's
Don't do things in exchange for something. And just
exactly.
Even if you're internally thinking about, I'm doing it in exchange for something, do not say it. It's like you're just doing it. That's it.
Yeah. Put a load of shit out first.
So many things from those books, man.
Yeah, there's a book by Gary Vaynerchuk called Jab, 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 Right Hook. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but it's basically like just do stuff without any ask. And then by the time you need to ask, which is similar to that like help thing, it's like by the time you need to ask for something, people will be wanting to give back because of all the stuff that you've given them already. So this is
and G, you do jiu-jitsu, right? G?
Yeah.
Would jab, jab, right hook work in jiu-jitsu as like a physical thing as well, or is that not a
choke, pass out?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like if you jabbed anyone, if you jabbed anyone in jiu-jitsu, you'd probably get kicked out immediately.
So there you go. Technically a win because they'd forfeit and have to kick you out because you're too good a fighter with the jab, 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 right hook.
But then you go first, then that's it.
So Godzilla -1. I want to say congratulations to the Japanese VFX company that did that, and just Japanese visual effects as a whole, and Japan as a whole. It feels cool being in Japan and seeing the award go to a Japanese company. So
yeah, that's huge.
I'm really happy with them.
Huge news. I mean, it's a big deal for the industry, I think, there, right?
Yeah. I do hope it doesn't set a precedent for budgets and expectations of labor. While it's true that they did have a very efficient way of working, especially with the director being so involved, hands-on, like sitting next to the people's desks, I am hearing stories that they worked a lot.
Yeah.
It's Japan. So... you know, if that becomes an expectation, it's a little bit scary news.
Will it also possibly invite future big budget films into Japan though, and offer more work to more smaller studios, or grow the studios that are there? Like assuming that it's not going to go into a terrible work-life balance style, but just in general, like maybe more work will be given to Japan.
I would absolutely love to see that for sure. As long as it's for the right reasons, and those reasons being that they like the look of things and they like the efficiency. But if it's a vendor, or if it's a client coming into Japan because they want to get Godzilla -1 for $1,000, then I would consider those hopefully the wrong reasons.
Yeah. The great thing would be if the Japanese VFX industry was really boosted from this. The scary thing would be if clients looked at what they did and went, look, that's how they did it. They did a ton of unpaid overtime and the director was sat in a room with them. Okay, that's like, maybe you don't want to recreate that bit, if that makes sense, of that, and just stick that exact same setup in a subsidy country to get, now you do exactly the same thing, get 20% off. That's the scary bit, I guess, out of that.
So
yeah,
what I'm thinking, okay, they managed to pull the film at a 0.1x the normal amount. Okay, let's think of that as a combination of different multipliers. So maybe overtime was a times 1.5 multiplier. Okay,
yeah,
that's not times 10. Then the director being the VFX supervisor, that's a huge one. Then maybe involving VFX in the production from the very beginning and being really mindful about the effect it has, that's a really big multiplier as well. And if just that one is isolated and taken into account by the Hollywood industry, maybe that would make a pretty positive change without necessarily involving the other multipliers. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, Adrian, you're making a good point. I mean, I know that they probably worked a ton on that particular project, maybe a lot of overtime. I've also worked a lot of overtime, and the budgets weren't $15 million; they were like $300 million. So like, I don't know how many more human hours you can put into a day, but I don't think that is the one thing that reduces the budget down to 15 million. I think it's exactly what Adrian's saying. It's a lot of factors that are piled on to just multiply down.
Well, the thing I think is
you're right, and
aren't producers, don't they get like a % of the cost of the film or something? So they're incentivized to like make it super high because basically their bonus or income's based on how much a film costs to make. So maybe there's not, some incentives aren't aligned there, if that makes sense, to the budgets.
I guess I have I don't know if empathy is the word, but I just it just makes me back up and look at it from a certain point of view, just because I know the names of the people and see the faces to them, and like I know how much like Takeda-san, Uehara-san, like these kind of people really put into, and I don't know, didn't sleep much and this and that. I mean, we've all worked our overtime. We're VFX veterans, but if like the Japanese labor standard becomes just that, a standard, it's not good news.
Yeah, it's unsustainable. It's like the race to the bottom, not just in terms of money, but in hours as well that you throw at stuff, if that makes sense. It's that is kind of nuts.
I completely agree with you. I will just say, at least the work that they did paid off in this case. Where I mean, I can't even think of how many projects I worked overtime and then like the show gets canceled or something. Like there's so many cases where the work doesn't pay off, right? And you don't get anything from it. So maybe those are worst cases or equally
But you don't want to
bad.
be working overtime just because like, hey, look, we should do overtime because we might win an Oscar, right? Like that's not.
Of course not.
That's not a good.
But I'm just saying it's nice that they got a reward for what they did. That must be a good feeling that like, oh, the work was recognized, globally for that.
Yeah. And it was time well invested in this case. There's many times that you just do overtime just to massage the version 200, and then whole sequences get stripped out of the movie for no reason. I mean, for no reason to the artist, of course.
Yeah. Shout out to all the people that are doing overtime and not getting Oscars.
Yeah, to the people that worked on the sequence for a year and then it didn't make it to the movie.
Yeah, the people that sequences get cut. Yeah, shout out to those guys.
Speaking of Oscar-worthy VFX performances, has anyone seen Dune?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
I have. It's very orange.
I loved it.
I didn't watch it yet.
Oh, Adrian, what are you doing?
So I can explain what I'm doing. I'm rewatching Dune 1. So I'm watching it 4K HDR in the TV, and I want to really have it completely in my RAM memory before going to the film, to the cinema. And I will watch it in English and in IMAX, which finally happens in Madrid. That's I couldn't do it with Oppenheimer, so it's happening with Dune.
Will there be Spanish subtitles at the bottom?
Yes, and they
It's
happen
okay,
to be
man, because we have Japanese subtitles at the bottom here. So.
Man, but it's like the most contrasty part of the image. It's impossible not to look at the stupid text all the time. I'm like watching it like that.
You just have to tune it out, dude.
Yeah.
That's why you see it in IMAX, so the screen's bigger. You don't have to like look.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like a comp lead, how when you're checking stuff, you look at it in the crop as well. Because you're like, okay, I don't care about these areas. But I wonder if they should start doing that. If they know that there's going to be the language at the bottom, like the transcript, you're like, okay, we don't care about that bit because it's going to be covered up in Spanish.
You just blur this like line
yeah,
at the bottom of the screen.
Exactly.
I'm really thinking about patenting sunglasses with a
bar.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Sorry.
There was a guy I went to university with who's from Slovakia, and his I can't remember the show now, but this guy, the guy who's like running this small company, he flew his whole team to London so they could watch it in English without the subtitles at the bottom and everything, just for that reason.
That is balling.
If I couldn't find it in English in Germany, I would probably go somewhere else to go watch it in English in Germany. But luckily, we can watch it. It's called the original version, and you just see it in English without subtitles. Is great.
Nice.
There's no IMAX though. I would need to go to Nuremberg to see it, which I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about going on the train for like an hour and a half to go watch it again in IMAX.
Yeah,
Dude, I've seen it twice now in IMAX. That experience is insane.
It is such a cool film, and it just makes you love. I don't know. It made me love filmmaking again. You know, I was like, oh, this is so epic. It's like a journey that you're going on, seeing this thing with all the music going on with Hans Zimmer. And the sound design, just the sci-fi stuff. Like one of the coolest shots that I remember.
Careful.
Yeah, I don't. It's not a spoiler. It's just the guys. Yeah. Okay, I won't say anything for Adrian, but
the one with the computer graphics.
Yes,
right?
the one with the good CGI.
I like that one.
The computer graphic. But it is worth watching the first one, though. I would say that, because there's no like at the beginning, they don't go previously on Dune or anything like that. There's no like catch up on it, so it is worth watching the first one before you go.
Yeah,
it's
it just goes right into it.
I think it's supposed to all be one big story. It's like the first book, right? So it's supposed to be a continuation completely. Not like the first book of Dune is both of those movies told in one. So it's
really?
Jumps
it's
straight
not like Dune 1.
No, it's not a
Dune
separate
1
book.
Dune.
It's like he had to break the first book into two parts, basically. So it's a continuation completely.
Have they confirmed if they're doing another? I mean, I guess they are, because it's done well.
They're doing Dune Messiah. Yeah, I think they are. I don't know if it's confirmed, but you know, Denny is already talking about it in interviews and stuff.
I think there's a Dune TV show coming out as well, by the way. Dune TV series.
It's about the worms.
Yeah, they've got voices. They can talk to them. It's like an animated cartoon.
It's the Dune expanded universe. It's gonna be.
It's like a business. It's just one of them is an accountant, and it follows his hilarious life.
He's got glasses on.
Yeah, exactly.
So apart from spoilers, what did you guys enjoy the most about the film? Is it like just a combination of everything being
in a world where CGI is getting properly shit on all the time, and like how movies need to have no CGI in it, I just like seeing a movie that totally embraces the fact that it's a fantastical film where the CGI needs to happen for the sci-fi to make sense, and it just really sucks you into the world building, and it's just such a cool experience, and you don't notice it, right? The CG in this case is so good, or the VFX is so good that you're just watching this epic film going on.
That's how you know the CGI did its job, is that it enhanced the storytelling without being there just for the sake of being there.
Yeah. There's not that many shots that I can remember that were just like nonsense CGI, like shots going on. Like everything had a purpose, and that felt really good to watch.
Yeah. There was nothing that like took you out because it looked horrendous. There were one or two shots at the end when there was like flow through cameras of something, and it looked a bit games engine-y. Yeah. That was the only thing, but all the orange stuff
I'd
looked
like
good.
to know what's up with that shot, actually. And I'm pretty sure we're both thinking of the exact same
I think
shot.
I know what you're talking about, too.
Looked a bit kit bashy.
No slight to kit bash.
No, not in terms of that, but just like it looked like it just looked
Be
like
careful
random,
with the
like,
terminology.
Okay. It looked like very like just looked like kind of like square, like cubes kind of next to it. It looked very games into
the
not quite right.
texturing on it too.
Yeah.
A bit strange.
Yeah, but I'll take that. One shot in 3 hours.
Oh, dude, it looks amazing. Exactly. I mean, most films have got a whole sequences like that, right? So
yeah, like their entire third act.
Yeah, exactly. Just been reshot because it. Yeah. Exactly.
I hate it when they clearly like get all the money shots to the proper huge budget studios, and then the easy shots they like just forget about them and they just do it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And
then those ones take you out of the movie sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually, while we're on Dune, has anyone worked on a show with a brown screen yet? Because they were using them on that, and they used them on Batman as well. I think I've heard mixed things. Because I think the original argument was like, oh, you can invert the color orange, and now it looks like green. But from what I've heard, you basically just use a Voronoi gradient node, make a clean plate.
Take it from me. That's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't work on me. You would
Yeah, of course. Like
You can't invert the color and then extract more contrast out of it. That's not how contrast works.
the thing about blue screen is that you're taking the color difference from the skin. If
There's contrast. I mean, maybe shifting it towards one channel so that it stands out more or something. But no, I mean, it's just a difference mat at that point. And it's
Yeah, you're just very annoyed. Yeah,
I don't know who is propagating this tale that like, oh, but if it's brown, it's the opposite of green, so it's just as effect. I don't know who is talking about that, but I can tell you for a fact that that's nonsense. You need contrast between the channels.
Yeah, but I think it's a really nice idea, even if it involves rotoscoping the whole film. But still, like you are getting a flat
the
background.
edges would look good.
You can do like additive stuff and get all the hair and everything. If we were shooting against a horizon or sand or something, you would get all sorts of artifacts on the edges.
Yeah, if there's details or foliage or something, yeah, it would be useless. But apparently the point was so that there wasn't so much spill.
It's like edge treatment, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if it's like spill, but it's more like edge treatment, I think. I can see it coming super handy then. But it's like, yeah, you had to rotor everything, man. Everyone knows it's just like they rotored everything. And Virinoid gradient, clean plate for the hair details.
They're hiding how much work they had to do.
Did you have a brown screen on Avatar: The Last Airbender or something?
No, we didn't have any brown screens. It was more just like I was speaking to a friend of mine who worked on the Batman, the recent Batman film. They had brown screens, and I read somewhere that it's like, oh yeah, we cleverly came up with it because it's the opposite side of a color. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work, man. And I mean, maybe this comes back to what that is going on in the industry right now, where people are like when people are, oh look, people are undermining VFX and things like this, and I think we're kind of doing it internally a little bit as well with this brown screen talk.
It's just so silly to me. You know what else brown is the same color as? Like usually skin.
Me.
Yeah, it's the same color as skin. So if you have skin against a sandy color, it's like, what are you guys talking about? There's no contrast there. It's like wearing blue jeans on a blue screen. Like, it doesn't make it.
No, but what they should have done, they should have painted all their faces blue. So when you invert the plate, the brown screen goes orange, and their skin tone goes now towards natural color.
Everyone's on set with just blue.
Right now,
the blue man group.
I would have more respect if they painted everybody blue and then they just inverted everything. So then you get a blue screen with skin.
No, but then you would have a blue spill.
The blue spill on the ground on the desert. It's. I mean, actually,
this reminds me of the. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to ask, like, because we're talking about all this kind of like stuff. Are there LED screen stages in Japan at all? Just while we're talking about like the newer stuff that people are talking about in the industry. Are there LED soundstage in Japan that they're shooting on?
They do exist. The closest I've come to working with one, not working with one, but when I was on Alice in Borderland second season, I asked the cinematographer if they were tempted to do it, because we didn't have, everything was like blue screen or green screen. He was, at the time at least, he was turned off by the amount of pre-planning that would have to go into it. So they needed everything from like the time of day, the lighting, the angle, everything they needed to be locked down. And he was turned off by having to shoot that way.
The scary thing about that is you do need to kind of light the people in the plate with the time of day in mind, I guess. But yeah,
sure. Just the amount of rigidity he was referring to. It wasn't just the lighting. I mean, I'm just saying that as like one notion, but yeah, down to like the micro details and stuff.
Out of interest, with that in mind then, Adrian, have you found that they would maybe do like 10 takes of the same shot with different backgrounds in, just in case? Or do they not really do that?
What I've seen is using a scene as a sort of an exploration environment where you can like find the shot, something that in a green screen you would not be able to, like you had to completely stick to the script or the storyboard, or then you do not know what you're looking at. I've seen that happening. Like you are really finding new angles, and whatever happens in the real location, that a little bit of a transfer to the stage, and then lighting the actors and integrating the whole thing, and then just turning it green on the first time of the camera, on the part of the camera is seeing, you just turn it green, and then you have a perfect constant. Mm-hmm. So then you have at least the test shot where you shot it with the background, and then you know what it's supposed to look like. But then you still have the green screen so that you can go for final render quality maybe, or massage it just a little bit, but still against a plate that was lit with an intention. So I think that's kind of a really nice sweet spot there.
That's cool. Yeah.
But you can enter so many places you do not want to be with this technology. So it's like lots of considerations to keep in mind.
So they'd have like an actor, not the main actor on set, but they'd have someone maybe like a similar height, and then they would like be working out the shot before the actor gets there, if that makes sense. That's how they would do it.
Yeah.
And then you shoot just green screen, basically. So you just swap it for green screen.
Yeah, or even with the actor, it helps the actor like understand the environment and look at where that the actor is placed, and then just okay, now let's shoot. Then with a click of a button, you just throw green on the frustum. So the rest of the environment still has the proper spill color. So that helps a lot.
So you just do it in the visible bit, you put green, and
You project
it's
the green
actual
from the camera
environment.
with a little bit of overscan, so that's literally the area that has the least amount of spill because it's right behind it. So
That's super
You still
cool.
get all the reflections on stuff from the rest of the environment, right? Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, it's
you have
all
to be
it's all
careful.
the Nuke 3D scene stuff, right? It's like
Yeah, exactly. That's what I noticed, that from everything you can learn to move into virtual production, like in camera VFX, compositing is one of the most useful things I can think of, because we're dealing with projections every single day, and color management and contrast lighting, like all of the things that we do as compers. They have so much of a transfer to this. Like that's the reason I'm doing it myself, is because I was the most prepared of the whole company because I was coming from compositing.
They got motion control rigs on the cameras as well, because that'd be super useful then, right? Because you could like basically do the same shot over and again with the different backgrounds and the green screen take. And are they using that much in conjunction with that stuff, or?
Not sure how much it's actually used. We've done some tests with a motion control camera, and you can do so many cool things with that. Like you can literally shoot something outdoors, and you track that camera, and then you add the same movement to the virtual production camera, and then you can have it live with a real world render. No, not Unreal Engine. It's like actually a plate.
That's super.
Actually, some other tests we were doing, like we were tracking the camera. So yeah, tracking the camera and applying that movement to a motion control camera that was outside live, so that you could get the plate rendered real time from the reality. You know?
Whoa, that's crazy.
So you could shoot in a different location, read live that camera data in, and you're capturing the LED panel with that camera movement in a different location.
Yeah,
man.
The total delay was a little bit too much, unfortunately, but I'm sure it's getting better. But
That's some stuff.
still, like it was like a second or something like that. So
good. You're gonna see directors with iPhones on the street just shooting stuff, and Adrian's there like working out the. So at my suggestion, something you could potentially do is, you know, on like Gravity when they had like the robots that were doing the painting the cars and that stuff. Adrian, you don't even need a massive LED panel thing. You just have a big LED panel on one of them, and the robot's always moving it in front of the motion control rig of the camera, right? And then you could just get away with having a 75-inch TV. And you're done. Because all you need, you don't need the LED panel in front of the camera to a certain extent. Obviously, you don't get the bounce light and stuff. But and then you can move the camera where you wanted it to be.
yeah, there's some companies that are doing some. I think it's called a gyro tuto. So the thing that spins the car around. So when they want to do like a car chase, instead of spinning around the car with the camera, because you see the end of the screen, they are transferring the movement to the car rotating, and then the screen displays whatever it needs to display. So that's being done already.
That's so cool. Are you finding that people are still like figuring it out per show? Are you finding that like the workflow's changing every single show in terms of the progress and the way people are using it, or are you finding there's like a set way that companies are using this stuff?
No.
Okay.
It's really young still.
Yeah.
Like so many. Like it's a combination of, let's say, 8 technologies to say something. And each of the 8 technologies are still evolving at an exponential pace. So, yeah, every single year it changes. But
super cool.
That makes it fun as well.
And are you finding clients come to these things understanding it more than they were at first?
Yes, that's a huge. So I saw like a huge spike of interest. Like everyone wants to do virtual production, and so many things trying to get done without any sense, without any common sense. Like. You're better off doing this in a green screen, or you should do this outside, or like I just see like a really small percentage of things that really benefit from this. That's something that I'm not sure that people know that, but like you have to really consider all the variables before choosing to shoot here.
What are those 1%, do you think? Like the ones that really do benefit?
What's the name of that
water
film?
reflections or?
Yeah, so soft lighting, which does not have any like super hard sources of light, like the sun, in a stable environment that you will have in a stable lighting situation. So that's great. Like you can have a specific lighting direction, like when it's with the sun, like the Batman scene, for example. That's a great one because you can have the sun right there for hours, and not much is happening that can destroy your environment, and you can light it properly. So that's kind of the kind of situations, or that Netflix film with the ship. How's it called? Like 1891, something like that. I might be saying the number wrong.
1899 or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. And then they are in the boat, and every time they're looking outside, it's the same environment, just sea going by, and the cloudy environment. So that's great for that. But not many other things.
I didn't think too much about how you could just pause the time of day. I could just make it infinitely dusk, which is obviously very helpful for many films and stuff. So that's what's really cool. Yeah.
Also, if you wanna, so one test we did with the La Casa de Papel, the Netflix show. We did one test with other companies, and that was really an initial test. It was about recreating an environment that was shot for Rio in the previous season. So it was scanned, the photogrammetry in El Ranchito, and we shot the scene in the LED stage like years later, just to see if we could recreate the shots from the actual, like as inserts. Imagine you destroyed the set and you have to get a few shots, and that worked great, like really, really nice.
So you just 3D scan everything? Or like Gaussian splat it maybe even, right? Like going for
exactly. That's where stuff is going now. Like you're shooting in a real location. Okay, then you just take a photogrammetry team for a few hours. Yeah, and they do not even need to process the photogrammetry. They can just store it in case they need it. And then you can recover that, and you can fake it really, really nicely. Like they worked great in that situation. So it's just doors that are being opened right now, and it's not
exciting.
Yeah.
And also with these LED panels, you can make it look like your whole VFX team's in Australia, so you get all the tax subsidies as well. So that's another use.
Get up your motion control camera in Japan.
Exactly.
Collect all the subsidies.
So just letting your webcam, you've got like the Sydney Harbour and stuff behind you. Yeah, I'm here. Give my 40%.
It's all being explored, but. Yeah, I think it's for compositors. It's super nice because we are so used to faking stuff all the time, and this is just that. It's just a VFX, but you have to know all the tricks in the moment because you need to fix the stuff in the moment. So,
but you're right that, like, as you said, like the client has got to really, really think about that stuff from the beginning, right, and really like decide exactly what they want. So, interesting seeing the two sides. Out of interest. Were they open to it, if that makes sense? Or was it like a no, or you don't want to do this? Like, did they come to you and ask what you would recommend in that production? Or were they just like, we don't want to do it for these reasons?
I wasn't involved in the actual shooting. It had already been done by the time we were in the discussion. But from what I gathered, he was only inquiring because he was open to doing it. It's just when he discovered what went into it, he just took a step back. The thing is, culturally here, like a lot of times, Japan's often when the rest, how do I phrase this? Like when everybody was opening their doors in COVID, Japan was like the last to do it. Not to make too many blanket statements, but there's just kind of like some expressions here that convey when new technology or things are introduced, they tend to be the last to adapt them here. Like they still use fax machines here, for example.
That's so crazy because I would imagine that Japan is like in the future. I didn't think of
this. This is the juxtaposition people experience when they first come here. Like it's known for like being high tech, and it is in many ways, but in some other ways, there's just a certain rigidity that would take a longer time for the large ship to steer.
Fascinating.
At the same time, though, that's probably what makes Japan so amazing, like, and how they've kept their culture, right? Because they're not just like mass embracing anything for. Because again, like you go to a lot of capital cities in Europe, and they're basically the same thing to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Whereas Japan, it's like, wow, like this is a whole different place, and it's like cash is a big thing there as well, right? Like they don't trust card. And when I go to Sweden to see people at IOP, it's all card and they don't trust cash at all in Sweden. And it's like, I remember having played for the Bullet Train, which is like a couple of £100 with cash. And it was like, wow, this is nuts.
I think there's a lot of similarities with Japan and Germany in this kind of way. They still use cash. But in the way that like, oh, German engineering, they must be like in the future. And like the way that you go on the metro is like with a little card, and there's a machine that literally stamps like the card to like go, and you're like, why don't you just have a tap card? And they still use cash. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever both countries do is good for making cars. That's for sure.
This is true. The stamp card is the secret to making good cards.
Like I can't believe there's a little machine you put your little ticket in, and it like stamps it, and it's like, how is this still a technology in 2024? I don't understand. Yeah.
It's a fun irony to see things like that in both Japan and Germany. Like again, Germany as well. Like you said, there's similarities. On one hand, they're known for like their engineering and their high tech, whatever. But on the other hand, you've got something making stamps, or they only take cash, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I was in Berlin once in a cafe, and I was meeting a friend, and he wasn't from Germany, and he tried to pay with card, and they were like, no, it's cash only. And he was like, oh, he basically asked the server, like, why don't you guys take card? And like, I don't want anybody knowing what my finance is coming from. They were very, and I think that was specific to Berlin, but I just thought, it clicked for me. Like they don't want anybody tracking their stuff, which I appreciate that, I guess. But
so to switch it up a little bit, I have a question. Are there some things you can advise to people that would help them save time in compositing and potentially avoid trouble or mistakes?
Generally, if you've taken a shortcut, that's going to be the thing that has to be changed, and you need to do it properly in the end. In my experience, if you can spot something, chances are your soup's going to spot it, and they're going to spot it last minute. So just do it, just fix it to begin with. That's one of the main ones I've spotted a lot. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. My answer to that question, one of them at least, is not caring about version numbers.
Yeah.
that's a huge one. Yeah.
I know earlier we talked about like version 55 versus version 96 on a project I was on. But a lot of times I find, especially with like younger artists, they want to final something in the lowest number as possible.
Is that true? I didn't know that was a thing.
It's the kids on TikTok, Tony.
the
The kids on TikTok are TikToking their versions and getting.
Oh no! I like to get my versions up so they think I'm working. Wow, this guy must be doing a lot of work.
You find
It's
it?
got
Are you
300
finding
versions.
that? Gee, in the studio, are you finding that then that like people are trying to like keep their version?
Yeah, for sure. In a couple countries / companies I've been at, and sometimes like things will get overwritten on something that was already published, and it just makes the whole process really, really difficult. Or somebody's like script will corrupt, and I'll be like, well, how about like the version before it? Can we look at that? And then it'll be like, oh, I haven't like saved a new version in like 3 days. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
That's nuts.
Yeah. I think you have to really, like, not as an artist, but from the pipeline perspective, I really suggest always making sure that any publish is like a source of truth, like it saves the NK and anything, and that it always versions up. Like on publish, it should version up directly, and there should be no way to go back to the thing. And what this is taking me to is I'm seeing that people render something, publish something, then they spot something, and they're like, oh, but I already published. It's like, just publish another version, man. Like,
yeah,
no problem.
Yeah,
that's a shining example, Adrian.
Yeah, just skip the previous version, make a new one, or submit both of them for review. Or there was one moment when I was a junior comper, basically. I think it was in Shanghai, and I just came into the studios in like the first couple of weeks, and I took over some shot, and I guess it had been restarted, or they didn't like the direction it was going in, or one of those stories. And the shot was already on version 78. And so I came in and, I versioned up a couple times, and it was like 83. And then we brought into review, and the VFX was like, oh, why is this shot on version 83? And I was like, I don't know, dude. I just picked up the shot like a week ago. Like, what do you want me to say about it? So like that happens all the time. I don't think that's any VFX soup who cares about version numbers, they should care about other things. I think that's my
It's
opinion.
so dumb. Imagine going to a restaurant and the person brings over the food and they're like, cook this in 1 minute. Just want you to know. It's in 1 minute, so it's going to be good. Just want you to know. Cook this pretty
It's a silly-
fucking quick. So that's
it's a
what
silly-
it's
You
like,
are the
oh, shit.
master at these kind of analysis jokes. I
It's
think
like,
back
I
on
don't
the
give a
file
shit.
cabinet example.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're not going to like
I
that
love-
version 7 when you can't recover the script and it gets corrupted and you don't have any other
No,
version to go back
it's
to.
so dumb. It's like, I just want to see something that's good. Yeah, like, who cares? It's
Yeah,
not,
it's such a little thing that. And by the way, if there's any studio that's small that needs to listen to this, you don't have to show the client the internal version number. You can version up for the delivery that you send the client. So you could send the first version as version 1, and then you could be on version 78, and then send the second version as version 2 to the client. They don't need to know the version number of the actual shot. So that's a delivery thing. Like that's none of, as an artist, that's none of your business how they want to present that version to the client.
just have new, and newest at the end. Newest +1.
This time
newer,
for real.
newer. Yeah, exactly.
Final,
Just
final.
send that to the client. It's,
Have you guys worked with major and minor versions in studios?
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not a
But
huge
that's
fan
local
of that.
to you, the artist. That's local to you, the artist. So it's like VO1_001. Then you daily it. Now it's V200. Like,
It's just
I don't know, how do
just
you want it?
preference. Yeah, I can understand why they do that because they're trying to hide version numbers. I don't care if it's version 200. So that's my opinion.
What do you do, Adrian? How are you doing it?
In a way that I want to fix. So not the best example. Like at the moment, what we have is sending to the farm is versioning up the thing. So we are getting a lot of versions up.
Oh,
But-
we have that at ILP. And people take the piss out of me because I have comps of I like to work on a shot, render, work on another shot, and then I jump. So I've got
Yeah.
versions of like 600 on shots, and people are like, why? And it's like every time
Yeah.
we do a pre-comp it versions up, every time. So yeah, I'd be rubbish if people comparing me to versions. I would not be good.
Yeah, we had some bug that every time we published something, it would version up the script. But even if it was a publish, like imagine you did a wedge and you had like 4 versions that were all from the same version number and you wanted to submit all of them. And suddenly you submit all of them and it would go up 4 versions. And then say you had, you needed like 50% of whatever you just did. So then you went up 8 versions. But like very, very quickly you're at version 150 and you're like, yeah, but I only rendered, I only did a couple wedges like 3 times. So I don't know. This is a pipeline thing and this is a delivery specs thing. So as an artist, that's not your problem. You're not part of the pipeline team. You're not part of any of that stuff. You just do your job. Make sure that you can recover your script and make sure that you get the amount of iterations that you need. That's the only thing you should be concerned about.
Yeah, this is the way to solve the pipeline thing is increase the number padding by 1 digit on the versions, and that's it. You have like 0001, then you're probably safe. If you reach 9999, you can just change the task name or something.
Speaking of this, though, actually, in terms of saving, something that Comfy UI does that I would love to try and do in Nuke is you can copy, if you grab one of the outputs of Comfy UI and drag it into the node graph and let go, it'll pull in the whole node graph that made that output. And man, would I love, because Nuke scripts aren't that big in terms of file size to a certain extent. So man, would it be great if like the first frame of your render had somewhere in the mesh data or something you could, like the Nuke script that made that render, right?
You could do that.
And then,
You can just save the metadata into the render. We have that.
can you save that whole, you can save the whole Nuke script into the mesh data of the EXR?
Yeah. You could just save the nuke script as a metadata token. We do that.
You mean the
we do
path
that
or
in,
the actual
But would it be in the actual EXR
No,
render?
it's a metadata. Yeah. So when you have the read node, you have a tab that you can just copy, and then if you paste in the nuke script, it will bring in the render. So every time it renders, it'll do. It's pretty easy to do. You can just make the key and.
I need to do Adrian's Python course and then I can do it.
Yeah, I forget the Python to get the nuke. Anyways, it's
like
really easy to
lines,
set up.
I think.
Because I've seen
There's
people
like
do
a-
it so that it tells you where the nuke script is, but then if you lose the nuke script or you don't save it or whatever, it's...
Oh no, but you like the moment you publish something, it should save the nuke script in a read-only location so that it's linked to that publication.
Yeah, but you don't want... But what I'm saying is, like, what if the nuke script is completely lost or corrupt?
Oh yeah.
You want that,
then you go to the autosaves, or you also save.
But there must be a way to get it in the actual EXR. Like everything.
You can get. So there's two ways that I can think of. One is you get it into every single EXR, which is huge. You don't want to be storing like potentially 10 megabytes in every single frame. Number two, in the same directory, you just save the copy of the script that rendered those EXRs, and for each farm submission, you copy.
A new nuke script.
Yeah, the nuke script could be saved. In the location of the EXRs, right? Then you could make a duplicate of it or something. But yeah, the thing with
love to be able to drag an EXR
with Comfy UI, like the what it's describing is like 6 nodes or something like that, right? It's just a few. It's just
you've got a filter, Tony, by the way, that just popped up a load of bubbles when you did a thumbs up.
Did I?
Look at this production value. Hey!
Oh man, that's funny. When you're using Comfy UI, right? You only have like 6 nodes, so there's not that much to store. But a nuke script, you have exactly what Adrian said. You have like hundreds of nodes. It's 10 megabytes.
In the first frame, though, who cares if it's 10 meg more? Like that's not, in the grand scheme of things, that's not like the worst thing in the world, is it?
I just think a path to the nuke script is
that's
probably fine. So
there's this thing that you have the like drop data callback in Nuke, so that you can, whenever you drag something onto the node graph and release the click, there's actually a callback there, so you can affect it and be like, okay, so if I'm dragging an EXR, maybe you can show a hotbox to either you bring the read or you bring the script or stuff like that. I'm doing a lot of that.
Well, what we do is we have a link to the Nuke script, and we have a button for import live group, and it imports a live group, and then you just go into the live group and then delete it after you've gotten whatever you need. So that's a nice little trick.
Have you guys used live groups much in production at all?
Every time I think I'm going to use it, I end up not using it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the day that I make a live group and other people are going to like source this live group and it's going to be great and we're all going to hold hands and skip. And then for some reason, like I always find a reason that like, I always find something else that would be more efficient than using the live group.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of what that director was saying about LED panels. It's like with live groups, like you need to kind of plan a little bit and figure out how you're going to use them. And it's just like, but at the end of the day, it's maybe easier to keep it as it.
Do you use them?
No, I've seen some really cool use cases though. There was a show at DNEG ages ago, and someone was saying it was really good. They used light groups for all the backgrounds. So one comp was doing like the backgrounds and running everything through like the same nuke script, I guess. They had like one nuke script for the backgrounds of a sequence. And then that would then be live grouped into like the shots that people working on for keys and edge integration and stuff. So that was one way. And then I saw someone use it in a really cool way at ILP on, I think it was on Willow actually, or a show like that. And again, it was a similar thing where like there was these very out of focus like stars in the background. And there was one, I think it was the lead comp even just doing all the backgrounds in Nuke. And then it was up to everyone else to like stock footage, and which is quite a cool idea. Like I actually think it would be really good. It's just, you have to kind of really could get super messy very quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know at least one studio that is working a lot with light groups, like a lot, like basing the whole pipeline on them. But you have to really structure the whole thing around templates and versions, and it can become quite messy, as you're saying. And I guess like in the context of Katana, where they come from, I guess in lighting, there's not that many iterations that you do on shots. Maybe it's just one reason it's stupid, but in Nuke, we can work on shots for many iterations and have to tweak things, and because our iteration time is way lower than whenever you have to commit to rendering something in a 3D scene. So in our case, like if you see you will need to version the light group thing, and you'll need to publish it, and you need to have it as an instance, then does it make sense to have it as a template or as a gizmo instead? Or like, is that conversation that happens every time? And for me, every single time, it's like, okay.
Exactly.
Like the Trickster example, like just bring it as a light group just because it's a way for you to dive in quickly, look at the reference thing, and then you discard it. But you need to, your script is not dependent on that script in some way. Because that's what can mess your logic easily.
I will say, in Australia, there was a very big culture of something called auto-comping. I don't know if you guys ever dealt with this kind of stuff.
Is this the thing everyone's been talking about that's going to steal our jobs, Tony?
No, definitely not. But basically, I don't know if it was just at the studio that I was at, or I think it was more of like this Australian way of comping. Like there's some hubs that do things differently, and in Australia, what I found was everyone liked to auto comp. What that meant was there's one nuke script, and there was a bunch of different shots that were loaded in, and they all went through the same nuke script with switches that were, when you render, it would like switch to the outputs of the shot, right? So like you're doing like multiple read nodes going through one script and then outputting many shots at once. And, it sounds really nice in theory. You're like, oh, I'm just doing 6 shots at once, until you realize that you need to do tweaks on each individual shot at some point, whatever point that would be. Maybe you can get away with doing 6 shots at once for the first whip versions, right? But at some point you need to adjust the roto, or you need to adjust whatever setting it is for that specific shot. And at that point, as soon as you save the render, or the nuke script rather, for that specific shot, it's very, very difficult to go back to the auto comp. So like once you have decided, hey, I need to go specifics, right, and change the setup for this one shot, and you separate it out, it's super hard to then, okay, we got a note. So now you need to open up 6 different nuke scripts instead of just one. And then people are like, well, why did it only take you, 20 minutes to render it yesterday, but now it takes you an hour? And it's like, well, I'm using 6 different nuke scripts now because they're all individual. Yeah. So it's
branching out is not the same as branching in. That's really
it's very hard to undo that. Yeah.
I use auto copying quite a bit, but it's not with the expectation of giving like a final or even a whip comp. It's more of just like a spread to see if your template works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, if you're
as opposed to like having different reads, you would generally have a backdrop with one read with a Python code that would just load in the read of the defined environment.
That's the kind of thing that you could probably do with a live group really well. It's like you just have the comp in one script, and you're just reading in live group and then writing out, and it's just a preview or something like that, right?
Again, I feel like I've tried to do this with live groups, and for some reason, I favored the spread comp.
These are
I can't remember exactly.
These are actual shots, and then nobody could seem to wrap their head around that. Yeah, there's 6 individual shots now. They're not just one going through one script.
But aren't they? Aren't they? Is what you're saying? You don't create a new script when it like goes.
No, what I'm saying is imagine there's like a sequence script, and all the shots in the sequence of the similar angle, I guess, are loaded in.
That's not cool.
So they have the CG renders and then the plates all with the same switch, like connect to the same switch.
Yeah. Imagine you have like 5 read nodes, 5 CG, 5 whatever. I couldn't tell. Like I think people were really trying to make this work. And I was never a fan of it because I knew the limitation of it. The limitation was as soon as you need to do something individually and save that script out, you're not auto comping anymore, and then you have to keep track of everything. So
that's not. And also, what if they like version 3 for one shot and version 5 for another shot? Then it's like, what do you do? It's just
I mean, imagine you have all the rotos. These scripts were absolutely mega massive, like all these rotos and CGs and layers and stuff, and they're trying to like switch between all of them.
The more efficient way of doing that is you have your template set up with backdrops and callbacks, and it sources each read node per environment variable, and it creates a new script for each shot.
That would be great. That would be like, it's like a template that loads in, the assets that it needs, basically.
Exactly. So then when it's time to go into the shot, you have your shot in the correct environment.
Yeah.
And it's good for kicking out whip ones. You could kick out whip ones so quick with that as well, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I'm a much bigger fan. I'm a much bigger fan of that because at least it's giving you, what you need into individual shots that are still individual, right? But this was like, let's just do it all in one place.
Yeah, on the scale of how dangerous stuff is, I'm seeing like tier 1 is, okay, you just split templates for the whole thing. That's not even dangerous. That's, I think, the preferred way of working of most studios. Then you have the light group, and that has a set of troubles that you can get into that probably some studio managed to find a way to work around that, and it's probably a Godzilla -1 case that maybe it works under their set of circumstances, but I don't think most studios can benefit from that configuration because it's so dangerous unless you plan everything super properly. And then scale 3 of danger would be the single script for a sequence. And man, every single time I've seen like a studio try to, I've seen it like quite a few times already, try to be like, okay, so this is a full CG sequence. It should be quite similar. Let's make it in a way that we can create something super automated and we'll speed every single shot. Okay, 100% of times they had to open at least 90% of the shots and do tweaks to them. It's like such a utopia to think that.
Yeah, it's a problem that everybody experiences. I can see the problem that they're trying to do, right? So in a lighting point of view, it's like we want to adjust one thing and it spits out all the shots. That's pretty much what they're trying to replicate. It's like in lighting, you have a 3D scene and only the camera changes basically, and then maybe some specific lights if they need to. But in general, you get all the shots for free. That's something that they're trying to do in comp, but it's just much harder because comp is very specific. Like it's very individualistic per shot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, actually, this goes back to like a mistake I see a lot of people make when they're starting out in the industry and when they're learning is they think a good comper would be able to do something in the smallest amount of nodes like this. And it's like, no, that's not what makes a good comp. Like a good comp is the clearest, like most obvious. You've shown all your workings out. And so that we can fuck with everything basically and nothing's nested. That's generally the better way of working.
Yeah. Clarity is key for sure.
Ease of change and yeah. It should be easy to read and to change those things. And
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. We've covered a lot of technical stuff. On a creative tip, a question I'm excited to ask everybody here. What are some things that historically, aesthetically, people have reacted well to that you've done or that are in your usual bag of tricks?
Just
God
coming from the moon. Just I mean, I guess like an aesthetic I'm seeing a lot in the VFX community now, because you definitely see like style changes. It's like the creator set it, which is like these like whacked, clamped out highlights. So like nothing's overblown. And like if you look at the creator, it's like it's super low contrast. The highlights are kind of like not peaking very high, if that makes sense. Like they're not crazy bright. And it's more like mid-tones. That's like the new aesthetic I'm seeing in all the shows now. Like Dune was like that as well. Whereas it didn't used to be so much like that. But that's an aesthetic I'm finding that I'm recreating a lot, personally. I'm finding
one thing that tends to work great every single time for me is going to the purest basics of composition, basically, and just playing with the contrast and making sure that the whatever you want to see is contrasted against the back, like all the super basic things. But it's like they do not fail every single time. Like the human eye tends to react well to those scale,
like you could do something I do a lot is like just a vignette, but it's not a vignette. Let's say the people on the left side like this, you would just do a roto here, feather it off, make that bit darker, same with the top. And that's a dumb, easy trick that I've used multiple times on shows. I don't know. How about you, G? You've got an insanely good IG, so to be honest, I'd be more interested in hearing your answer to this, because I'd probably grab these.
One I'd love to start with is proper execution and justification of a flare. Too often you see like a flare that's unjust, and if it's unjust, and we've all been asked to make unjust flares in our time.
I know. I feel attacked right now. You saying that?
I'm attacking myself, but it's like it's gonna happen. You're gonna make unjust flares, but if it's gonna be unjust, at least time it properly and make it tasteful. Something that adds to the composition rather than just being there just for the sake of being there.
Yeah,
that's one. Another one is making atmospherics work for you. I think it's very tempting to just add, like it's a silver bullet, add mist to something. But if you don't do it in a tasteful manner, then it just kind of washes out contrast. So it really has to be done in a way that's pleasing to the eye. And the way that you educate yourself on a proper way to do it is to study the greats. Study Roger Deakins, study Steven Spielberg, study Ridley Scott, study Denis Villeneuve. All these guys just do it so perfectly. On a technical level, it's like proper timing of like dust waves. Just something as simple as like mist just roiling. If you have like a collection, whether if you're at a company, just know like 2 or 3 elements that are going to work for you every time. Just just knowing when to add them and how to add them. And the way you do that is just by making your scripts at least as efficient as possible. In other words, if I need to add a dust poof to something to help sell the storytelling or the impact of it, the first thing I need to do is pre-comp my comp, right? I need to pre-comp all the things that happened before that. The second thing I recommend is localizing that pre-comp, because the goal is to play things. You just want to like put A over B and be able to play it. And that's the most efficient way to get the timing down. Because the first thing you want to do when you add a practical element, before you color correct it, before you care about the integration, is timing it properly. Then the thing you do after that is positioning. Or timing and positioning are kind of, they go hand in hand.
And then you grade it to integrate it after those things.
Basically. Exactly. Yeah. After those things.
Yeah.
In a way that's quick. And with atmospherics, I mean, it leads to so many other cheat codes to make something look good. Like earlier, Tony mentioned God rays, right? God rays can only exist if there's atmosphere and if there's a strong source of light, and then there's something occluding the light, and the light goes through, and where the light doesn't go through, you get God rays. So knowing when and how to do God rays, and in Nuke, like our best friend with this is volume rays, right? We've all used it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people will just make a volume rays node, have it set to RGB luminance, and think that they've just created God rays. Whereas, like, maybe a more effective approach is you have your light source or something that's glowing, and then you take the thing that's occluding the light, like a character, you set it to alpha solid, and then you use that to create a shadow.
Yeah.
So you cut that shadow out of the glowing light source.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing you do, or that can be done, is interactive lighting through the atmosphere, which is a whole nother cheat code. And this is something you see all the time. MPC, DNAG, ILM, Weta. Whenever you have like a misty kind of environment, anytime you have like light reacting inside of it, you get this like, it's a trend to get this sexy kind of light within the atmosphere. And you have to know that, I guess just knowing how multiplication works is a real good one to get that.
That's like selling the depth of it, really. It's like, oh, there's a light that lives inside of this volume, and it's really selling that fakery of it, right?
Yeah, the scattering of the particle.
Yeah.
So just quickly going to the dust waves topic. Basically, one thing I'm noticing is whenever you are color correcting or grading something, your iteration time is you tweak it and you see it. You tweak it and you see it, and then you can do many tweaks in a moment. And that's one element of integration, but movement, motion, all of that is another element. And in order to have an iteration of judging the movement, you have to play it through. So every single time you play it through, it's one iteration, in contrast to so many iterations in a grading or color correcting thing. So you have to be able to play it through many times. And if every frame renders in 10 seconds, then you cannot do it.
Yeah, you'll never be able to feel the timing.
Generally, when I work, I have the main Nuke script that I'm working on, which is my shot, and then I have just a Nuke script, which is just like I don't know, like a sandpit where I'm just playing around with stuff, right? And I'll just have the output of the shot, throw that in there, maybe put the camera in as well, so I can do like a card 3D to get the element sat in, and then just be timing, as G said, like the timing, time offset, or the speed as well. And then you're just working over the output and doing it, because then it's just 3 or 4 nodes and it's super quick, right? And then when you're happy with it, then you put your main script in the correct space and color grade and stuff. But yeah, you're right. Like, you have an unfair advantage if you can get your iterations up, basically.
And I'm seeing a huge lack of that in junior profiles, at least in the recent companies I've worked in.
Same with camera shake as well, right? Like, you see people put camera shake node at the bottom, hit render, wait 15 minutes. Oh, okay, a bit more. Okay, I'm going to nudge it. It's like, fucking hell, like, you could have done exactly the same thing very quickly if you just rendered it out, and just, even if you don't have overscan in your output, you can still get an idea of your camera shake.
Yeah.
And if you remove the motion blur, then it's also faster to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess something, just quickly, so something I found with atmosphere, which is a lesson I had to learn, maybe from like junior to mid, was when I had a heavy atmosphere, I'd be looking at the bottom of the script being like, okay, you know what? The CG is not integrated very well with the background, but because there's atmosphere, now it looks cool at the bottom. And I generally find that actually the better way to do it is your Nuke script. Your shot should look correct and good. as you work down your merge nodes, right? It shouldn't be like, yeah, it looks okay here, and then the atmos goes over, and now it smushes everything together and it works. It's that's a really, really important one for compers out there to remember.
I have one trick
For sure.
I have one trick that I tell people whenever they're comping CG, especially into a shot with atmospherics, is I always do the blacks matching stuff, and I kill all the color. So I remove any of the color. So I multiply 0. If my character still looks like it exists inside of that scene with no color, it'll look like it exists in the scene with color. So
that's a cool idea.
It's a good way to see if the contact is correct, if the distance is right in the smoke or whatever you have. So a lot of times the color of the character is interfering with your ability to judge whether or not the integration is working. So if you just remove that and then you're just looking at whatever you want to call it, like maybe you're calling it atmosphere that you're plussing on top of that or something, just whatever it is, it's like the alpha of the character. And if it's in the shot completely black, then if you can fake it and you're like, oh wow, this looks like it's really there, and you're doing a good job.
So you just gain down the RGB to 0. So it's basically just a black silhouette.
I know people do black points different ways, but basically wherever you do it, you should be doing it at the bottom of your color corrections. And I just have like a node that like I multiply to 0 and I just turn it on. And so when I'm doing my integrations, I'll usually do it with this in mind, especially with like smoke or God rays or something like that. Because if it's fitting in, then you just kind of remove the multiply and the color's back, and you have all the atmosphere. It's basically a way to judge. It's like a good way to judge if something's correct.
I think it relates to isolating whatever it is that you're trying to judge. So making sure every step is correct, making sure that your blacks is correct with a black object. So, or even if you're working with integrating a render with light groups, you just turn off all the light groups except for one. You integrate that properly, thinking what that light should look like. Then you move to the next. Then you put it together. Then maybe you need to tweak it. But again, it all goes back to whatever you're trying to do, whatever technique you're after, make sure that you are able to judge it in an isolated way so that your eye can... Isolated, I don't mean just doing that technique, but have it in a way that what you change is that, and it cannot be influenced by other variables that you are not controlling. So
you hit the nail on the head. It's It's like being able to work just on that one thing with speed and precision and accuracy. Accuracy meaning that nothing else is interfering with what you're looking at that moment, right? It's good stuff.
And
tips.
In scenes that don't have a lot of atmospheric content conceptually, I find there's, even in this situation, there are ways to use atmosphere. And one of my favorite ones, it's another cheat code, is anytime something glows, whether it's an explosion or some ethereal type energy, even if there's no atmosphere in the scene, if you take that glow, isolate it by itself, and multiply it by an atmospheric element, silver bullet. Like
yeah. Make sure though that smoke element is actually tracked into the shot though, right? Like that's the way. So otherwise you get like this like weird like
What the hell is that?
It's exactly.
Yeah.
But no, definitely.
It's such a surefire way to make like a glow look sexy.
Yeah, adding a little bit of detail into that. Yeah, that's nice. I love all these tips, and it's cool that like we're all aligned on a lot of this.
I mean, actually, coming back to a previous episode, because Tony, something before you mentioned was how you kind of have everything that should glow and then put it at the bottom, right, of the shot.
Yeah.
And the downside of that is you can't do G's trick, because now you're multiplying the front glow by some smoke that's behind, right? Because you couldn't mask your glow then in depth, multiply it in depth smoke.
I know, but then you have the camera glow and the element glow as to.
Okay.
So for me, I visualize it as, okay, where is this glow happening? Is it on the lens? Then it's just at the very bottom. Is it happening inside an element? Then it's places wherever the element is.
Yeah,
and then you multiply it with the smoke at the correct depth, basically.
Yeah. So this would, I did like a 1 hour demo of this in Trickster's like internal thing. But basically, there's two types of atmosphere. What Adrian said, the one that goes on top and one that's part like. If you look at a foggy scene and there's something in the background with a spotlight, like that's not a post glow. Like it's glowing. It's illuminating the atmosphere, right? So that would be the thing that G's talking about, and like because a camera is not going to put a smoky thing on like a light that is blooming from the post effect, right? But if it's sitting in the atmosphere with some stuff, then yeah, I would do that. You have to think of it two different ways, separate that out. So
yeah, one is diffusion, the other is lens aberration.
and they both exist. It's not like one or the other. It's like you have to figure out like how much, and oftentimes it's both. So it's like you have to have a little bit of both going on.
Yeah, if you're looking at the foggy street lamp from within a car, then you have the street lamp glow, then you have the glow in the glass of the car, and then you have the camera glow.
I have here's a good test. If anybody's walking around at night and you see the moon or you see a spotlight, take your finger and block the light from your eyeball, and you'll see whether or not that bloom, that glow, is happening within your eye, like within your eye, or it's actually illuminating the smoke around the environment. So if it completely goes away, that means that it's just happening in your eye. If you cover the moon and you can see that the clouds are still illuminated, that's an example of environment glow. So.
That's a cool trick. I like that.
You mentioned
walking around Germany like that.
I'm just walking around like.
Oh, it's just Tony.
What was that? Sorry,
you mentioned camera shake earlier. Just a small tip I have on that is one thing that's kind of always worked for me is having two different camera shake nodes with maybe a node in between to break concatenation, whether it's like a blur node set to 0 or a merge node or something. But like if there's a rocket ship taking off, or if there's anything that requires camera shake, usually I'll have one that's like a high frequency. So just something that's kind of doing like a what's the word? A murmur.
Yeah. Like a jitter or something, like a, yeah.
Here I go being Grady Coffer, but yeah, like a you have one that does that. And then if there's any kind of impacts that you need to sell, boom, boom, that's when you have your high amplitude, lower frequency as a second camera shake node. It's not beneficial to have the two in the same, like, because you don't want to be animating the frequency.
Yeah.
You want to just keep the frequency as it is and animate the amplitude.
Yeah, layering the noises, laying the curves together. Yeah, it's super fun.
If I may just step in for a moment. So the curve that the camera shake has is the FBM, so the same as the regular noise node in Nuke. And it's based on the octaves, same as the normal noise, so it has like the different frequencies added together. But then you don't have that much control unless you are setting it to only 2 octaves. And then you're changing the linearity to change the difference. But if you're literally having 2 different noises, then you have strong control over the, let's say, the slower wavelength of each of them, and then you can completely isolate the low one from the high one. Even if you could, in theory, make it with a single one, but then the amount of control is way less.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but you've got motion blur to worry about as well, though, right? Because now you've got weird... what do you do, G, in terms of motion blur? Because if they're not concatenating, then... Or do you just have the motion blur on the big one at the bottom?
Yes. Nobody's really...
If it's small, then yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I think actually Ben McEwen has a camera shake node, I think, that does a lot of this, and it figures out the interpolation between the frames and stuff. You can sometimes get weird results, but because you get other stuff where like it would look like it's just moved from here to here, but it's actually like swung around in the subframes, if that makes sense. You get this like crazy motion blur, and you're like, what the hell is going on? So
I use that all the time.
Like,
I think that's my go-to now, is that because you have jitter. I don't know if it's called flicker, but it's basically like a high frequency, medium frequency, low frequency, and you can turn that on. So it has a little bit. I think it's called float. Is like the main one that's kind of doing.
It's just 3 transform nodes, isn't it? And then they're all concatenating, and then the last one sets the motion.
You have global controls for each one, and it's really nice. It's a really nice node to play around with, and an overall global control. So, but sometimes I'll just throw in for these big bumps, like G was just talking about. I'll just throw in like a normal transform and just animate one frame or something. Like, just I wanted instead of messing with a tool, I'll just like force it to do that bump exactly where I want it. Yeah.
Actually, a camera trick I used to use a lot. I haven't done this for a while now. I used to do it at university. It was my secret trick to make stuff look cool. I would watch the shot and then film a wall with tracking markers and then design the camera move like this. And then you just 2D track it and put it at the bottom. And now it feels super natural and doesn't look man-made or anything.
I have to say, I've tried doing that once, and I think it's a lot more unnatural than you would imagine. Like I tried doing that for my demo reel in university, and when you're trying to force the camera shake, like
you're like overacting.
Yeah. So actually, what I had to do was like sprint for 10 seconds, and then I was like, oh. But yeah, like the camera shake in your phone is like so good at stabilizing it. You have to like force like what camera shake is supposed to look like. Props to the camera operators out there.
The weight of the phone is not the same as a red camera.
Yeah. I recommend doing what Josh did, but sprinting 50 yards and then going.
And attach a brick to your phone so it weighs the same as an Auri.
Have someone punch you in your arm.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen a few studios where they had like a library of camera shakes that were tracked from real cameras, and then you could apply.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And there's
stock footage camera shake.
Yeah, there's this Blender plugin. It's called Camera Shakeify, and I think it's not sure who created it, but it's great. And it's just that, like a collection of tracked real cameras that you can combine together. So,
and then you just time offset them, basically. Sorry, G, what were you going to say?
I think DNEG had a node like that as well. It was just like a collection of different tracking boards that were like, one was a da-da-da-da, and the other was like a goof, et cetera, et cetera. But I can't remember if it was a tool made for a specific show or if it was like a company-wide thing.
It's a good idea to collect them.
I ended up not using it.
I used it.
Cool. Or you could even like search on YouTube, right, for like roughly what's happening in your shot, and then try and find someone that's filmed it and then 2D track that or something.
Yeah. Pull up Jason Bourne and camera track one of the shots.
If you can,
Taken.
That's what we need, G. Like you've done after like 2 hours of jiu-jitsu, we need you to hold your phone against a wall, and then we can have some like legit good camera.
You can release a whole stock curve.
G.
You stick a GoPro to your head, and then you do it.
Yes.
A last one I'd like to touch on that I find to be a surefire way to make people smile, at least, is having good silhouettes. And I recommend to reference the greats, people like Spielberg or Deakins. Most Spielberg movies, actually. And this is actually when I started doing it, because on Ready Player One thing that Spielberg would constantly reference is silhouettes. So it was an atmospheric project, but occasionally like people would wash out the silhouettes, and he wasn't into that. So it doesn't just mean clearing everything out, but it means if you have a figure, putting something bright behind it so that you sell, whatever storytelling point that is.
That's a great tip. Like drawing your eye, right? The whole composition part of it, aspect of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Just not, at least at the very least, not confusing the eye. Even if it's not something that you want to be the focal point, don't let it be necessarily a mystery. Just, okay, there's people over there.
I always tell students that you need to make your shot idiot-proof. And like, if we could, we'd point a big arrow at what you want the audience to look at, right? Because you're going to look at your shot for 2 weeks or something, so you know where to look. But it's on screen for 3 seconds, and you need them to look exactly where you want them to look. So, as you said, G, like high contrast areas, and that's why vignettes work, right? Because you're basically making the areas you don't want people to look boring and stuff. So it's, super valid. Super valid.
For sure.
Well, I think, this is been a great topic. Yeah, I've learned a lot of tricks myself now, so that's good. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, we'll see you next month. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.